Welcome everybody to the Shy Hack Night, episode 158. We are here in this room to build, share, and learn about civic tech. This is our 158th gathering, if you can believe it. So we've been around for over 3 years. We always like to do this in the beginning. Show of hands if this is your first Hack Night. Welcome to all the new people. Yay. I promise we're very friendly. For those of you who raised your hands, we actually have an orientation session as one of our breakout groups, which we'll go through later, but we'll call on you again in a little bit. Tonight we have a presentation from Jeff Meisel. He's a Presidential Innovation Fellow working with the U.S. Census Bureau and 18F. So he's based in DC, and he's going to be sharing a project that he's been working on with Census and 18F. Called CitySDK. I'm kind of curious, show of hands, how many of you are here because of that? Okay, popular. So we'll be hearing from Jeff about that in a little bit. But before we do, we want to get to know everybody. So we'll quickly go around the room, and I do mean quickly. And everybody. Huh? We're going to try to meet your neighbor. Oh, okay. Should we do that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have more people, so it'll take less time. To meet your neighbor.
Wait, so we do that instead of everybody?
Yes.
But I want to still hear from everybody. Wait, can we try something? This is a bad idea. What if we try introduce the person to your right? Is that a bad idea?
That'll take longer.
That'll take longer. Okay, fine. All right, fine. We had a discussion last week about trying to make people interact more with each other. So we're going to try right now. Take 30 seconds to meet the people who are directly around you, especially if you haven't met before. Okay, do that All right. I'm so sorry. All right, excellent. That wasn't so painful, was it? Right? We're all kind of nice people. That was an experiment. We'll see if that worked. I'll talk to a few of you later. But yeah, we want to. This is a community. We've been meeting together in this room for about 3 years now, and we to get to know each other better. So we'll try some other experiments out over the coming weeks. But it seemed like that went all right. So we'll resume our regularly scheduled programming and get back to introductions. So we'll quickly go around the room. Everyone will introduce themselves. And then we'll have an open floor for announcements. So if you want to share anything with this group, you're welcome to. And then after that, we'll have our presentation. And then we'll, following that, have some Q&A with the presenter, with Jeff. And then we'll break out into groups after that and work on stuff for the remainder of the evening. So let's start with introductions. I'll start. I'm Derek Eater. I'm a founder and partner at a company called DataMade, lead organizer for this event, and I like to make stuff with open data.
Hi, my name is Christopher Whitaker. I'm a civic technology consultant here in Chicago, working for both Smart Chicago and Code for America. This is Steve Luker. He builds apps.
And I'm Carl Fogel with Open Tech Strategies. We help companies launch open source projects.
Hi, Jeff Meisel, Census, and I work on open data projects.
Hey, I'm Paul. I work here at Braintree, so if anybody needs anything, let me know. We're blessed to help out.
Oh, me? Yeah. Hi, I'm Tiffany McBride. I work at the
Craig McCrowan. I work with a startup, Policy Data Institute, on open government, data-oriented, and by day, don't think this is good. I'm a lawyer.
I'm a famous software developer.
I'm Guillermo. I'm working as a database developer.
My name is Steven, and I'm a transportation reporter.
Michael, I'm a web developer in Bike Answer.
Robert, portfolio strategist for Hive Chicago, a network of youth service organizations.
I'm Chris. I'm a web developer.
Josh, software developer.
Abby, I'm an interactive designer.
I'm Lars, a .NET developer. I'm Duna, I'm a front-end developer.
I'm Joel. I'm a public information officer for the Cook County Bureau of Technology.
I'm Isha, a database software developer.
Guys, I'm Chad. I'm a third year medical student at Northwestern.
Hi, I'm Vivek. I'm a second year PhD student at developer.
I'm Dov. I'm a fellow at the UC Berkeley Institute for Data Science, and I also work at the UC Berkeley D-Lab.
Paul, a software developer and technical lead in private.
I'm Lean. I work in civil legal aid.
I'm Eric. I'm a software developer.
Hi, I'm Rose Frier, and I'm one of the co-facilitators of social service delivery breakout, and also one of the co-founders of Emily, the modernizing public benefits in
I'm Amy, fellow data science for social good.
I'm Brian Burrell, software developer.
I'm Jordan. I'm on the data team here at Braintree. Zach, intern on that data team.
I'm Ryan. I also work here at Braintree on the data team.
I'm Tiffany, a co-founder fellow with Indianapolis with Northwest Data. Well, I'm also Indianapolis with
I'm Chris, data administrator.
Martin, I'm a transportation planner.
Steve, I do consulting.
Maliki, I'm a software developer.
Amanda, I work in educational content development.
I am Carlene and a technical writer for software and smartphones.
I'm Jeffrey, and I'm a Philippine grad student. And also, I'm a web developer.
Dave Hutchison, I'm a urban planner by training, but I'm interested in crowdsourced bike navigation.
Hey, I'm Scott. I'm a software developer at NORC at University of Chicago.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a demographer from Princeton University, and I'm also a data science researcher at California Center.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm an intern at Data Science Research Good, and I'm a master's student at the University of Chicago.
Hi, I'm Aisha. I'm a basic student in the University of Houston, also a fellow.
Chris, I'm a reporter at the
Hi, I'm Josh. I work with Cook County Government and Open Data, and I also help facilitate the education breakout.
I'm Keith. I'm an architect, urban planner, and founder of a company called Spatial Optics, which is focused on spatial data.
I am Maria, also an architect and urban planner, and I'm at the CitySDK Launch.
Yes, I'm engaged.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Neil. I'm a software engineer.
My name is Eric. I do GIS.
I'm Katarina. I do data shop. I'm Masha. I'm also a data science fellow.
Hi, I'm Avinash. I'm a graduate student at UIUC, and I'm also a data scientist.
I am Nikki. I'm a graduate student at UC Berkeley at the University.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a former postdoc for neuroscience at data analysis.
Hi, Claire Thompson. I'm an urban planner, for a fellow with USDA.
Anand Sator, I'm a software developer.
Gino Bernardi. I'm a software developer.
Matt Key at the University of Chicago in the Tech Lab, and working for the space.
James Southport. I'm a math enthusiast.
I'm Hollis, I work in City Hall.
I'm Eric. I'm a software developer.
I'm Claire, I'm an interactive designer at the University of Chicago.
Tina Kane. I work for Ford City.
Reed, and I'm a graduate student in science and entertainment, and that's data science.
I'm Asif. I'm a PhD student at USC.
Dennis Hardy, I work at East Park Learning. I'm a software developer.
I'm Luana County Day. I'm a developer at Devmate.
Hi, my name is Utkarsh. I am doing an internship in Motorola.
Hi, I'm Ritesh. I'm a cloud consultant and tech manager.
I'm also doing a prep here.
I'm Michael, and I'm also good at Hogwarts. I'm in the high school enthusiast.
Hi, I'm Maureen. I'm a digital curriculum
My name is Mike. I'm a data engineer at Rubius and JavaScript.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lincoln Taylor. I'm a consultant, education, social sector.
It's Matt over at USC's Institute of Policy.
I'm Arnold. I work in spatial analysis and data analysis, transportation planning, and education policy.
I'm Mark, and a finance PhD and entrepreneur.
Miss anybody else? Please.
Yeah. My name is Edwin, and I'm with Disability Advocates.
Captain Soha, civil legal aid attorney.
Mary Coon, urban planner.
Thomas Arson. I'm a software engineer for KPR. And side note, if you lost your Virginia driver's license,
It's good.
Right
All right.
Nick Yang, I'm a data scientist at the Center for Data Science overall.
Folks over who just kind of wanted to introduce yourselves?
Should we go right across?
Jason Wynn, that's Duke. I'm still Jacob.
You guys want to introduce yourselves?
We're Tom and Sirius. We're with Alexander.
So just so you know, they're recording. You're all famous now. So they're recording for story on the National Day of Civic Hacking, correct? Civic Hacking. Great. So hey, we're fans. Anybody else?
Steve, writer, producer, transportation.
The Brave software engineer.
Jim, analyst, data slip.
Is that everybody? Speak now or remain unintroduced? Okay, great. Well, awesome group. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the new Data Science Association Goodfellows. Welcome to Chicago. Announcements. So open floor for anybody to share anything with this group. I think it might be worthwhile just mentioning somebody from DSSG want to talk about DSSG. The G. DSSG.
Sure. So this is an annual fellowship in Chicago, where we bring 42. Oh, awesome! There it is.
Yeah, website.
Where we bring 42 aspiring data scientists from all over the world to Chicago, selected from over 800 applicants from a variety of different disciplines, as you've heard as they're in the room, and they put in teams of 3 to 4 other data scientists with technical, mental questions, and they work with partners like the EPA, the Department of Labor, school districts, World Bank, international organizations, to solve critical challenges faced by those organizations that we solve with data. And the fellowship kicked off last week. We're going to be here for 14 weeks, and hopefully near the end of the summer, the project, several of the projects will actually present at Hack Night. And so you guys be able to see that.
Excellent. Awesome. So yes, open floor for announcements. Oh, yeah, Christopher, you have one you want me to? Yeah, you want to pull up?
Event, which is the first one off the bat. If you go to smartchicagocollaborative.org/hack4change, we've got all the events for this week, and there are a lot. There's this. Tomorrow, Code for America is having a fellowship info session at Dev Bootcamp. So if you're interested in the Code for America Fellowship and thinking about applying, you can go to that. The Urban Sustainability Apps competition is this weekend. They're having a fish-a-thon at the Shed Aquarium to talk about sustainable fishing. I'm running Civic Tech Leader Training at Blue 1647. The Adler is having a National Data Center Hacking event, and there is a legal hackathon also happening here in Chicago, and then there's a bunch of training guides and social media accounts to follow. So for all the information on that, that's smartchicagocollaborative.org/hack4change.
And just to add a little context, Christopher's trying to make Chicago the best hack for change city. Have you guys heard of the National Day of Civic Hacking before? This is in its 3rd year. It's like a national event all across different cities in the US where it's just basically trying to like do this in all sorts of different contexts, getting people together to work on technology projects to help the public good. So Chicago is right up there at the top as far as the kinds of things we've been working on and the community we've built. And so Christopher is doing the hard work of making sure that we stay on top, first in our hearts and in Civic Tech as well. So these are all very cool events. And yes, you're already participating in it, whether or not you knew. This is technically a Hack for Change event. So moving on to other announcements. Anybody? I saw Rose. Yeah.
So this is kind of a shameless plug, but Emery's launched a redesign on Thursday of last week, and it kind of coincides with us scaling to 2 new centers in the city of Chicago. For folks who don't know, Garfield, particularly the neighborhood of East Garfield Park, has about 40% of households in poverty. So it was a really tremendous lot of coordination with the Mayor's Innovation Delivery Team, as well as community service centers in the city of Chicago, that we're scaling to 2 new centers. So on the north area, it's going to be integrated into how all of the caseworkers manage eligibility determination, as well as in the Garfield Center. So it's really, really exciting stuff for our team to be sprawling through Chicago some more, and we're really, really excited about it. So there's a press release on the site if you're interested and want to learn more exactly about what we've optimized the site with, but it's completely new in terms of just design and overall interface and just making it more accessible and quick for low-income people to check their eligibility.
Thanks, Rose. Other announcements? Yeah.
We've got 2, Thursday and Friday, we're having a Mozilla Science Sprint, a global sprint at Blue 1647. It's a global event, starts in New Zealand at 9 a.m. New Zealand time, wraps around the earth twice. Work 9 to 5, so no overnights, but those hours shift as the earth turns. And so there's a whole bunch of, thank you so much for the link, there's a whole bunch of projects listed on this page that you can contribute to. Not all of them require any science knowledge, not all of them require any technical ability. So there's a bunch of different ways you can contribute if you're interested. Blue 1647, it's in Pilsen. Awesome place to be. Second announcement is about the CNT Apps Challenge, which is one of the National Day of Civic Hacking events that was mentioned. We have a really nice little team coming together around a very viable transportation solution for young people, an app that can help connect them to programs and get them there. So if you're interested, if you know what an API means, because I don't, I could really use your help. So we'll be hanging out at the transportation group during the breakout sessions. Come join us, and you can also join us this weekend. Apparently, there's a pretty nice kickoff event on Friday night. I think there's booze. So see you there.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next one, we do try to keep meeting notes. Hey, look, people are already, with the power of collaborative document editing, we are getting on this area. So anybody who wants to help contribute to keeping notes on both the announcements and our future presentation, we much appreciate it. Moving on to more announcements. Did you have one?
Brief one.
Yeah.
A much smaller scale than the other ones. If anyone here knows a little bit about Django and wants to help improve a genuine open source civic app, come talk to me after we get done here.
All right. Other announcements?
Also, open source for Mac people, specifically in leaflet ideas.
Okay, got a young nonprofit. Its focus is on senior financial security. A lot of seniors are now living right on the edge. You hear about gold-plated pensions. These are people without the gold-plated pensions, and they're living right on the edge. One of the projects is a national nursing home database. Looking at people here, you probably have not been shopping for nursing homes, I don't think, unless you're older than you are. It is a horrible situation right now. People get dumped into these things, and it's awful. And we have a national database. We're developing it now. It's clean data. We're integrating it with census data. we've got good statistics background. We are really lacking in coders. We need people to help with visualizations and presenting this data to consumers and social service organizations and others who can help these seniors around the country. It's great data and a great opportunity. So afterwards, you can see us, we're kind of like a proto working group right now, and we'd love to talk to you if you do coding and we can use the help. Thank you.
Make sure to mention it during the breakouts too.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks.
Other announcements? Did you have one? Yeah.
Again, very small scale, working to build a Vivian Meyer Museum to get her out of this litigation hairball that she's fallen into. So if anybody's interested in learning about the project and the Vivian Meyer fans out there, please look for me.
So you might want to get a little context with Vivian Meyer.
Oh, she's the nanny photographer. And if you've heard of her, you're probably a fan already. And if you haven't, I can give more context, but I think it's best to do it individually.
Sure. Thank you. Other announcements? Kathy.
Hi. So last week we just published a blog post on the Data blog. It's on technical documentation. It's also cross-posted on the National Day of Civic Hacking blog. So if you're a developer on open source projects, I'm sorry about your documentation probably sucks. So yeah, if you work on open source projects, you should read through this and make your documentation better so that other people can use your projects better. And also if you're a new person and you're not super involved in open source projects, but you want to be, you should check for documentation and bug people if the documentation sucks. I think that's also a good way to get involved if you're not like a super hardcore developer.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Other announcements? Okay then. Well, we'll move on to our featured presentation. Jeff, you want to come up here? So I heard a few people mention that they work with census data. Maybe a quick show of hands if you've ever worked with census data before. Okay, so this might be right up your alley. Do you have like an easy time or a hard time working with that data? So it's like super rich and valuable, right? But I've always had struggles with it. So I'm particularly interested in hearing what Jeff has to share with us on ways to make that even easier. So without further ado, Jeff and CitySDK.
Sounds be good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here in Chicago to launch this project. We took a lot of inspiration from the tech scene here, specifically the OpenGov group, now with the new rebranding, but also the DSCG folks. And when you go across the country and talk to people in the open data space and say which cities really get it and have a thriving community, Chicago always is at the very, very top of the list. And so when we started this project a few months back, we knew that we wanted to engage this community first. And that's why I'm here this week, really to capture your feedback. This is just a start. And so ultimately, we want you to get in our issue tracker on GitHub, tell us what you want to see fixed, tell us where we're messing up so we can make this the most impactful project as possible. But first, I want to just explain why is CitySDK? And CitySDK, or Software Development Kit, was inspired by a similar project over in the EU, where they spent, I believe, $5 million or €5 million of funding to try to get cities to be more interoperable with their data in a couple key verticals. And we thought, that's a really empowering mission, because from the developer perspective, all of a sudden, if you build an app for Lisbon, perhaps that can scale to Barcelona, or perhaps that can scale to another city. Similarly, in the States, wouldn't that be great if you build an incredible app for Chicago and it's easy to port that to New York or LA, and so we can begin to get scale both from the entrepreneur standpoint of building a product or company, but then also from the social good standpoint. What's really awesome about the U.S., and there's many things awesome about the U.S., but from an open data standpoint, we have a census that is across the entire country. So I've been at the Census Bureau about 9 months. I come from the private sector. I'm not an expert on census data. I'm sure some of you know a lot more about census data than I do. I'm also not an expert on working in government. You might be quite surprised that, in government, not everything is agile or open source, right? And so, those are some of the fun things that we've been able to work on through this project. And we're really excited because I think through an open source approach, we're able to really kind of bring in the users of our data more closely into our development process. So why CitySDK? Because we believe the city is at the core. We believe that, just if you look at the population of folks within this room, there's software experts, there's policy experts, there's folks who are working at nonprofits. And so when you bring all these viewpoints together, oftentimes the SMEs or the subject matter experts really understand the challenges that the community faces. The software folks, as are reflected in this group, can tap into their passion and help solve some of those issues. And so with an SDK, what we envision is the census data overlaid with local context can really be helpful in providing solutions for challenges or opportunities, in this case Chicago, but across the entire country. I mentioned it's open source. It's very collaborative in nature, and so we have a number of modules that we'll talk about in a moment. And really, we're trying to build an ecosystem here. So it's not just a technical, software thing. It's really about fostering an ecosystem through open data. What's in the project itself? Right now, it's an open source code library that is supported with JavaScript. We envision supporting future languages in the future, but for now, you can take this product and build a really nice web app with it. We have a set of technical guides. So Kathy, I'm definitely going to check out your docs on how we can improve our guides that we already have. But they walk through how you can use open data and other open formats and open source tools like Leaflet to build out an application. You can see the list of integrations we currently have. Census Bureau, of course, Department of Energy, USDA, HUD, and then also to industry partners, so Esri with their ArcGIS services, that allows us to have access to 23,000 local data sets, and then as well as Socrata, who is, from my understanding, used in Chicago. Is that accurate? And so this allows you to basically take federal and local data and use it together in building apps. So what kinds of things can you do with it? An example would be, and I'm going to contrast this with how you could do it with the Census Public API previously. So I'm going to get a little bit geeky here, but then we're going to jump into some demos where we can really see the apps. But before, if you wanted to get the population of Washington, D.C., for example, you'd have to understand what a FIPS code is, which I didn't know what a FIPS code was. It's kind of a nuanced thing, right? And so you'd have to understand a FIPS code, and so that's one separate service. You then will have to go and navigate the American Community Survey list of variables to understand what population is. And we have this awesome machine readable format B06011, but who knows what population, where you get that from B06011. So you have to take those two properties, request in two separate requests, and to get your response. With the CitySDK, what we allow you to do is in a single request, ask for a geography and then a set of variables to return aliased data. So you can just put in, I want population, or I want median income. And then you can get both the geography and the demographic data all together on response in a format, GeoJSON, that you can quickly put on a map and begin to gain insights from that. And so that's what the value of the developers. We want to make it such that you can be more productive when you're building apps with open data. So with that, I'm going to jump in and give a couple getting started demos. So before I get into the first demo, I wanted to share what I'm personally most excited about of this entire project, which is... Can you go? Yeah, definitely. Thanks. What I'm most excited about this entire process is the census is now on GitHub, and so we are working, open source, and we also have our, our Scrum board, so you can follow along and see as we're developing CitySDK. You can submit issues to our GitHub tracker, and then influence and help us prioritize what you want to see coming out of this project. And so this was super hard to implement in government, but super awesome. I hope you all participate, and so you can kind of see we're getting a lot of input from community members across the country already, so that's fantastic. So if you jump to our main page and click on Getting Started, and I went ahead and opened up some tabs just so I wasn't sure any latency with the connection here. But the Getting Started section walks you through getting an API key for the first time. So it's meant to be very friendly for a new developer who's trying to explore using the Census APIs. The CitySDK sits on top of the existing public APIs. So it's really just a layer on top of it that allows you to access it in a much quicker way. You can enter your API key, which I've already done, and then you can walk through a series of examples. And so this is the best place to kind of get started. But to walk through this first one, say I want to draw the boundary of a state on a map. What this would look like is making a request with the state abbreviation, specifying the level, giving that response back, and then passing the GeoJSON object to the mapping software of choice. So then in this case, I'm using Google Maps. You could definitely use Leaflet or any tool of your choice. And when I go ahead and run this, so you'll see the boundary on a map, which is conceivably it looks quite simple, but what's happening behind the scenes is a really compelling feature for the Census Bureau, because before, the way that we would handle our geography boundaries is through TigerWeb, which is a fantastic tool, but it's not friendly with open standards that are used to build web apps. So what we had to do with the CitySDK was we basically had to create tooling such that you can get GeoJSON boundaries back from the TigerWeb service, and you can even submit your own custom geographies into TigerWeb. So this gets really powerful when you think about neighborhoods and other custom geographies that cities deal with all the time. The CitySDK is very friendly in that case. In terms of some of the other features that are in the product, when you're looking at geographies, you can also specify a sublevel. So what this does is if I'm looking at a state, I can set sublevel to true, go ahead and run it again, and then in a few seconds, what's going to populate are the counties that are represented within the state of Maryland. And so now I can have all the boundaries there, and then I can also specify individual variables that I want to get back out of it. So if I wanted to, I could specify, there's an example below where I say variables, give me back income, give me population, give me a median age. And so within a single request, I get the geography data and I get the demographic data that then I can easily build into my tool. So this saves the developer, there's a lot of wrangling with data in order to quickly build up a visual to get up and going. So that's kind of the first example. The second one, simply on the geography topic, say you wanted to actually draw on a map some geography and really kind of zoom into a certain area of your community. In this case, we had a triangle between Baltimore, Washington, and Annapolis. What I can do is I can specify to the CitySDK, give me all the tracks that are within that custom geography. In this case, any track that is included or touches a geography will get returned. I can also say the geometry has to be within that triangle. And then when I make the request, it'll actually only include ones that don't extend beyond that boundary. And so there's a lot of tools like this that make it much easier to get up and running with the data sets. So to kind of recap that demo, what we looked at was CitySDK sitting on top of the existing public API. Right now, we support all the ACS data sets in this project, so the 1, 3, and 5 year. And we also support specifying your location 4 different ways, so lat long, state, street address, or zip code. We offer GeoJSON compatibility now. You can get your geographic and demographic data within a single request. You can use aliasing for common variable names. You can specify and kind of tune in the granularity of the data that you want to work with. And then you can also pass in your own custom geography, such as a neighborhood. So that's kind of the out-of-the-box capabilities with the project, just from the census side. So when you look at the CitySDK hierarchy, there's a census module, and then other partners and organizations that are plugging in have their own kind of modules that can plug into that. So let's look at some of the other modules. So in this demo, I'm going to look at HUD, ArcGIS, and then also USDA. So if I jump back over to the browser, this example is similar to the one we just looked at. So now I'm going to actually zoom into Chicago. I'll refresh that real quick. This one we actually worked at. So we did a workshop a few weeks ago, and we had a US Chief Data Scientist, DJ Patil, and a number of partner agencies help us build example apps with the CitySDK. So this one was actually built for the city of Pittsburgh. And so the default setting is Pittsburgh. But we can move over and zoom in to Chicago here. What I want to do is I want to look at, say we're doing some housing analysis around properties near metro stations. So what I can do is I can, using this tool, I can specify a custom geometry around the metro or bus stops. And then what will happen is it'll pull back all the census information that's specified there, as well as the HUD information that, in this case, corresponds to the number of outstanding loans and the aggregate of the balances. So this will just, kind of to illustrate. But it's pretty cool because agencies like HUD, they rely heavily on census information to distribute some of their funding to the local communities. And so it's natural, it makes a lot of sense that you'd be able to use this data interoperably in this way. So this is kind of an example app that you could build with the CitySDK. So this guide called Using Multiple Modules walks you through step by step on how you would do an example like we just saw. This particular one uses USDA information, so it uses a farmer's market data set. I won't go into the details, but basically, after you import your module, so imagine this is just one JavaScript file. So one file. You add your mapping script. So we're using Google Maps here. The CitySDK depends on jQuery, so you got that in there. You add the other dependencies and the different modules that you want to use. You instantiate those. Provide some mapping logic. And then this is kind of the core piece of code right here. This is where we're making the request. So this is what we looked at the very beginning, where we're saying, okay, I want information from California and getting back all the counties in California. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mash up all the counties defined by census geographies with the USDA API to look at the farmers markets within all those counties. And then I'm going to do a pop-up so I can browse and kind of see what's going on there. So the completed application, very simple. You can browse by the counties in California. You can click on one, say San Bernardino, and then I can just get a list of the farmers markets that are there. So this would just be kind of some code snippets that you could use to get started in your own application. And the amount of code that it took to write that, I can see almost on 1 or 2 screens worth. So it really kind of trims up the amount of code that you need to build an app like that. So to kind of recap, so we looked at modules, how those are used to integrate in the project. We looked at the availability of local data sets. I didn't show you a Socrata or ArcGIS module, but we do have examples on our GitHub repo that talk to that. And to create your own module, we have a guide that walks you through how you might go about doing that. So I'd love to see how, if there's a need in this community, maybe there's some really interesting data sets that we want to build a CitySDK module for. An example project that I'm personally working on that I think is a pretty cool use case of CitySDK is this idea of mapping innovation spaces within cities. So if you think about it, this picture over here is from Digital Harbor, a group in Baltimore that created this rec to tech idea where they found rec centers that were closed down and turned them into tech centers for kids. And so if you look at challenges with getting kids interested in STEM and STEAM, a lot of times you need to have connectivity, a way for them to have access to hardware. They need to have a technical mentor. and they need to have a place in their community where it's culturally accepted to go and learn about these new things, right? I mean, even if you think about the meetups that we attend, sometimes I'm uncomfortable going to like a Ruby on Rails meetup, and that's like my favorite, my favorite programming language. But it's anytime you enter a new community, you have to say, okay, do I feel welcome here? And so I think this would be a really awesome example of the City SDK, but then showing in a community where are these spaces, public libraries, rec centers, the kids or even folks that are trying to get back into new careers can go and learn. So this is an example use case that I'm personally working on, and I welcome any help on this project. How can you get involved? So we're kicking it off this week. I'm going to be attending the Urban Sustainability Hackathon this week. All of our code is on GitHub, and so begin submitting issues. Submit pull requests, and we're excited to get your feedback on how we can improve this. We also have a national challenge that's happening, and so it's open already through the end of July, where we want to take the best apps that are built with the City SDK and then have a showcase in DC and virtually to kind of highlight really awesome examples that use federal data plus local data to impact their community. So with that, here's the information on City SDK, the links, my contact information, and I'd love to welcome it up for a few questions.
How long has this been out there for?
So we basically just completed a 12-week design process, so it's pretty fresh. And what you're seeing is kind of our MVP and our first set of features that we're looking to get feedback and try to improve on. Yeah.
So it sounds like your basic goal is to make census data more accessible at sort of a geographic level, so that users will have like some sort of online way to kind of drop in and then see like the city or their state. That's kind of the end all goal, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it because that's been a technical challenge before, and a lot of the demos are kind of geared towards the geography piece of it. I think really our vision is to unlock some of the capabilities of open data. Census by itself provides awesome context, but you need other data sets. And so really we want to create interoperability between census and federal entities like HUD, but then like the local data from the city of Chicago, and provide tooling that's open source with common technology stacks so that subject matter experts can then build an app that solves a vertical housing challenge or a vertical challenge in education and that kind of thing. So a lot of it does have to do with the geometry, just because that's a sweet spot for census. Yeah.
So what's the feedback been so far, if any, from inside government agencies? I'd imagine it's something that would be really useful for them. Have they shown an interest in it? Do you think they have the people on staff to be able to make use of this kind of tool?
Yeah, I think it's there has been a lot of interest. So the workshop we did at 18F 2 weeks ago, we had 15 partner agencies participate, and a lot of the agencies are excited because over the past few years, there's been a movement towards more open data and more public APIs, but it's kind of been a fire hose of just, okay, there's the data, go run with it. Whereas this is more of a conversation with the community. And so I think that's where, the government, we're not experts on how do you foster developer communities with your APIs, right? And so this is kind of an outlet where any agency can plug in and then begin to get user feedback and begin to see what's happening at GitHub and kind of drive that through user-centered design. So a lot of the agencies are interested from kind of the outreach perspective and engagement with the communities. Yeah.
You have ACS data right now. Is there any plan to get more historical data or other census data out there?
Yeah, definitely. So right now we do only support ACS. You can certainly pull in the decennial and other legacy data sets that are on our API. You can just tap into those already through our public API. But based on the feedback from the National Data Civic Hacking and then our discussions on GitHub, we'll prioritize what the users want. One area where we are getting a lot of feedback are from folks that are in the data science community and trying to right now a lot of the features are more front end focused, JavaScript. But we've had folks that have tried to kick the tires using data science approaches, and doing like batch geocoding and things like that. and hitting some bottlenecks. So we're now looking at how can we continue to expand the capabilities beyond just JavaScript. So we'd love any feedback on either data set availability or just kind of approaches that people are using with census data.
I guess the JavaScript libraries, how readable are they? Are they documented, or are they like 20,000 characters in one line? What's kind of the structure of the way that it's written?
Yeah, I think they're pretty readable. Check out our guides and let us know. I'm sure we could do better on the documentation. But that's the past sprint and this current sprint has kind of been our focus of just documenting all the capabilities because we do want it to be an entry point for people who aren't experts using open data. So inherently, we want it to be like easier to get up and going with it. So our goal is to have awesome documentation. We're probably not there yet, but definitely let us know.
And how about modifications to the libraries themselves? Is that something that is practical at this point?
Modifications to the libraries themselves from third-party contributors, or
yeah, pulling it down from GitHub and making a change to it so that we can pull in the census data, for instance.
So right now, yeah, you can definitely fork it, submit a pull request. The way that the project from an open source project perspective is structured is each owner of a module has that on their own GitHub repo, and then they submit a pull request to add it to our gallery. And so this gallery, believe it or not, this was inspired by the Open Gov project list because I thought that was an awesome way to showcase like example apps in communities. And so basically, we're going to be having like all the modules, and right now it's a pretty basic text view, but the recommendation is to basically build a module to add functionality to the CitySDK, and then an entity organization own that, and you're kind of in charge of that source code. Then submit a pull request so that we can link it to this project. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to improve the census module, which is part of the project.
Two questions. One is probably related to what you were just saying. So it sounds like basically any organization agency can submit a pull request and create a module, and that can potentially be featured. So, for example, if you're talking about GIS processing, someone from Mapbox would probably decide to try to build something that gets put right next to the ESRI staff.
Yeah, I mean, some of the capabilities, so Census has, our own data centers. And so, like, for example, our geocoder service right now sits on our own data center. And so if they were trying to implement a capability that would be native, in our code base, that would be a little bit trickier because it has to go through internal approvals and the like. But if they're able to implement some functionality that can run on a Heroku or an Amazon cloud somewhere separate from our internal stack, then that's totally fine. And we would consider including that in there.
My other question is along the lines of what Derek was saying. I wonder, as candidly as possible, if you can share some of your experience with using those throughout that process. Like you said, it wasn't necessarily easy to educate or persuade people in the agency to be open to this style of workflow. So I don't know if you can share any examples of strategies or sort of concepts or how persuasion happened.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you, some of the pain that we felt, and I mean, like one thing we'd like to improve is right now there's a slight delay from the time where we push out code updates to GitHub. So it does go through kind of an internal QA process, which is good in one sense, but typically with open source projects, you'd like it to be live updates inside the repo. And so that's kind of an area where we're continuing to kind of push the limits. Like we're doing our sprint cycle is 2 weeks. So we write the code, we do in 1 week, we do like a 1 week QA, and we push out the next release. So that it's like a 2 week delay. But for government, it's still pretty good. I think there's so from my perspective in the private sector and working in software and developing user communities for software companies, the value of having a strong ecosystem is more apparent because your company is generating revenue. I think in the government, there's no sense of P&Ls or product lines or things like that. And so building the business case, so to speak, is challenging. And we have, great leadership at Census who, just is super supportive of this and gets it that Census is, the data agency for the country. And if you look at other data providers in the industry, whether they're the Googles of the world or the mapping companies of the world, I mean, everyone wants their data in an API now, and they want it to be usable. And so I think having strong leadership and supporting this has been huge for us. And hopefully, we can share best practices, go to the other agencies and say, hey, this worked, this didn't work, and then they can decide, how much they want to plug into this.
Yeah, this project is a partnership of Census and 18F, and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit and what that might imply for procurement and lightweight innovation.
Sure. So I'm an employee of 18F that's basically working for Census, and so the partnership is basically that 18F is helping to drive a lot of API best practices within government, a lot of adoption of open source and the like. And so it's really a, kind of the technical team and the folks that are helping out with the project are collaborative across 18F and Census. But in terms of, the code base and what we're working on, and like our, I mentioned in the slide that we have a national, I mentioned we have a national challenge. And so, like, for example, this challenge, had to go through the proper approvals of the Census organization. So Census is owning, the submission of apps and that stuff, as well as the media advisories and everything like that. But we've just been collaborating very closely with 18F because they bring a lot of experience, and there's a lot of people we can lean on over there.
It also might be worth noting that, although it doesn't sound like it, 18F is also a government agency. They're inside of GSA. So it's basically they're operating as like an internal consulting dev shop inside of the federal government. So that's the relationship.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So I'm still trying to conceptually define what the CitySDK is. Right now, I'm getting a sense that it's some kind of wrapper for existing APIs. Could you just talk about who defined this? Could you just kind of do that again?
Yeah, sure. So it is a wrapper for existing APIs. That is correct. There's also functions of processing that we do within the SDK that you would otherwise have to, each developer that's using the Census API would have to write tens and hundreds of lines of code to do the processing on their own. And so the CitySDK basically allows you to send requests to multiple APIs with a single request to bypass all the hoops you would jump through to do it manually. And we, through the 2 or 3 years of our public API going to hackathons, our user research team, which is basically one guy, heard feedback from every single person using the API of, I don't know what FIPS is, I don't know what these variables are. And so we basically, in a way, the CitySDK is allowing us to have a sandbox to try to improve on our own API as well. So there's that component for Census, but then there's the kind of community component of trying to integrate with other data sets, which is more of an ecosystem, kind of, I would say, organization piece versus technical piece.
So there's also a component of matching up APIs and making those new mashups a single API. Is that kind of?
Yeah. So a lot of the apps would be mashups that you could bring in, like the census geographies and the HUD data, and then ideally you could add, Chicago building permit data. So that's a great use case of it.
My question is about the usability of this data, and that we're right now in the middle of 2 censuses. So we're looking at 2010 data. It just seems so completely far away. I mean, if Uber didn't exist really, and obviously you have those projections, but I feel like whenever it's part of a report, it has to be complemented with some kind of live real-time data. You have a Twitter feed on maps, which are very telling. How do you think about keeping the census data, I guess, or continuing in the format where will just become more kind of live and live markets. Now with the API, you expect this to be live, but if you're looking at 2010 data.
Yeah, I think generally I think that's a great point. I mean, we do have 2013 data. ACS or Decennial, there's a lag time from the time we take the survey to the time we release it. And so I think those are valid points. And I think that's something that the organization is spending a lot of time thinking about. How do we, at the end of the day, this project at the end of the day is a small piece of how Census disseminates their data. The folks that, our analysts and the like. So I think that's something that is extremely important. And I know we have a lot of people thinking about it. But I don't have a roadmap or any timeline on when that'll be improved upon.
Do you see this as a project that's going to be supported like in perpetuity by the government, or is this kind of like a, it's funded right now, maybe it will be funded in the future?
That's a great question. What I'd like to see happen is we find the right kind of collaboration framework to where the community begins to take ownership of this. Because I think, ultimately, and you can see by the set of features we currently have, it's very census-centric. But I think a lot of the value is going to be from other data sets and experts and people who are really good at GIS and really good at data science contributing to this project. And so right now, what we hope to do is do market validation and say, hey, this actually worked and our developers tell us they like this. And so how can we take this to the next step and build it into something that another entity helps own? Maybe that's Census plus Department of Commerce, or Census and HNF and data.gov, or maybe it's something that's not even federal agency specific. So that's something that's yet to be determined.
I want to comment on that if I can. I think the other question I had earlier about the buy-in from other government agencies. I think that's actually it's important to sort of go towards that direction, not just in the outreach component, which sounds like is the main thing that the interested in right now. Right now, outreach is thinking about it in that frame is sort of puts CSDK into the nice to have category, but not crucial and not mission critical. Try to get them to actually use it in their day-to-day work, right? I mean, the data is essential. They already use it in some other form. So I think that the challenge and the thing that you should try to shoot for in the next year is try to get them to start using it for their mission critical stuff. And that way, they have to fund it. It's like a line item on their budget because they depend on it.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. Yeah.
You mentioned that this was inspired by a similar project in Europe. Is there any level of comparability or any planned level of trying to spread data beyond the U.S. borders?
We would love to. We had one of our team members go over to a conference that was in Barcelona in I think the November, December timeframe and learn best practices. They're focusing on like a tourism API, a transportation API. And then I believe it's Open 311. And so certainly like Open 311 we could use and incorporate that in this project. So yeah, we'd love to collaborate with the EU moving forward. At this point, my perception is they're taking more of a kind of a standards approach and getting the cities to sign up. And our approach is not that approach is wrong, but our approach is a little bit different where we're trying to look at the pain points from the developers and understand how can the developers help inform the features that go into it. How can we make it more of an open source community to where something that could become valuable to cities, and then the cities just want to sign up to do it. So it's a little bit different from that perspective, but we'd love to collaborate with them, and they have an awesome team that are doing good stuff. So.
I just want to say that while we were taking this talk, I submitted a ticket to shoot for the project, and I got a response from someone on their team. We're working fast in government.
I'd love to chat with anyone after this presentation and capture feedback and listen to your ideas. So thank you so much.